There's a tiny house floor plan that architects keep drawing over and over in 2026, and it is not the loft cabin, it is not the geodesic dome, it is something almost embarrassingly simple. One wall does all the work. Every pipe, every appliance, every outlet lines up along a single wall, and the entire other side of the house is left completely empty. No island, no second counter, no wasted inches. It is called the linear single-wall tiny house, and once you understand why builders keep coming back to it, you will probably never look at a floor plan the same way again. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel breaks down tiny and alternative housing with real numbers and no sponsor telling us what to say. Hit subscribe so you catch the rest of this series, because later in this video, I'm going to show you the one design decision that decides whether a linear layout feels like a spacious little home or a narrow hallway with a bed in it, and most builders get it wrong. Let us start with a plain definition, because this term gets thrown around loosely online. A linear single-wall tiny house is a floor plan where the kitchen and the bathroom, the two most expensive and complicated systems in the entire build, are pushed against one continuous wall. That wall carries the water supply line, the drain lines, the vent stack, the gas or electric hookups, the cabinetry, the appliances, all of it. The opposite wall carries nothing but windows and maybe a bench or a bed. There is no second run of plumbing anywhere in the house. This is not a new idea. It is the same logic that shaped narrow city apartments, ship galleys, and RV interiors for decades. What changed in the last couple of years is that tiny house designers started applying it deliberately to full THOW builds and park model cabins, not just as an accident in a narrow trailer, but as an actual strategy for building smaller, cheaper, and faster. This matters even more on a THOW than it does on a foundation build. When your home is sitting on a trailer chassis, you have wheel wells cutting into your floor plan, and running heavy drain lines across the width of the house means routing them around or over those wells, which adds framing complexity and cost. Keep every drain and supply line on one wall, and that problem disappears entirely. It is one more reason this layout keeps showing up specifically on trailer builds rather than just stationary cabins. The tiny home market has been growing steadily, and a lot of that growth is coming from buyers who are more budget conscious than the early tiny house movement crowd. They are not chasing a Pinterest aesthetic first. They're chasing a monthly payment that makes sense. And when you're trying to hit a number like that, plumbing is where the real money hides. Every foot of extra pipe run, every additional wet wall, every second cluster of fixtures adds labor hours and material costs that most buyers never see until the invoice shows up. A single wall plan collapses all of that into one run. One trench in the floor, one vent stacks through the roof. One wall needs to be built to a tighter tolerance because it is carrying services, while every other wall in the house can be framed as simply and cheaply as possible, which matters a lot given recent lumber and labor spikes. That is the financial argument, and it is a real one. But it is not the only reason this layout keeps showing up in 2026 designs. Here is something a lot of people do not think about until they are standing inside a 24-foot trailer. In a home that might only be 7 or 8 feet wide, every inch of floor space you give to a second counter or a kitchen island is an inch you're taking directly from your walking room. There is no getting it back. A linear plan solves that by making a decision most other layouts avoid. It says the working side of the house belongs entirely to plumbing and appliances, and the living side belongs entirely to people. That means when you walk in the door, you are not squeezing between two runs of cabinetry like you would in a galley kitchen. You have one open lane straight through the house, and that lane can flex. It can hold a dining bench in the morning, become open floor space for stretching or yoga in the afternoon, and fold down into extra guest seating at night. Designers sometimes call this a continuous spine layout, where the kitchen sits at one end near the utility hookups, the living area sits at the other end near the door, and the open lane between them creates a sight line that runs the full length of the house. That sight line is doing a lot of psychological work. A narrow home with a broken-up floor plan feels like a hallway. The same square footage with one unbroken line of sight from the front door to the far window feels like an actual room. If floor plan psychology is interesting to you, Stick around because in a few minutes, I'm going to walk through the exact rule that separates a linear plan that feels open from one that feels like a tunnel, and it has almost nothing to do with square footage. Let's talk about actual budgets, because vague promises about savings do not help anyone planning a build. Tiny house construction in 2026 generally lands in 3 tiers. A basic do-it-yourself build typically runs somewhere in the $17,000 to $57,000 range. A semi-professional build where you hire out the specialty trades but do a lot of the work yourself tends to land between $41,000 and $87,000. A full turnkey build from a professional builder usually starts around $70,000 and can climb past $150,000 depending on finishes. Inside every one of those tiers, the trailer or foundation is usually the single biggest line item, followed closely by the kitchen and bathroom fixtures, which commonly run somewhere between $3,000 and $15,000 combined. Windows and doors often add another $1,500 to $6,500. None of that changes based on the floor plan. What has changed is labor. A single wall layout means your plumber and electrician are working one continuous run instead of 2 separated ones. That alone can meaningfully cut the hours billed for rough work because there's less travel time between fixture clusters, less redundant vent stack work, and fewer inspection points to coordinate. On a DIY build, it also means less specialty knowledge required overall, since you're not learning how to properly vent 2 separate wet walls, just one. Now, because this channel does not do hype without honesty, let's talk about where the linear single wall plan actually falls short because it is not the right answer for everyone. The first problem is counter space. When every appliance, the sink, the stove, the fridge, and your prep area all live on one wall, you run out of linear feet fast. In a lot of builds, that means picking 2, maybe 3 of those things to have it full size and shrinking or combining the rest. A 2-burner cooktop instead of full range. A slim under-counter fridge instead of standard one. If you cook seriously, or if you regularly have 2 people trying to work in the kitchen at once, this layout will frustrate you quickly. There is simply nowhere for a second person to stand without being in the way. The second problem is storage. A galley layout with 2 walls doubles your vertical storage real estate. A single wall plan cannot do that, so designers have to lean hard on going vertical, floor to ceiling cabinets. Open shelving that uses wall height most builds ignore, and storage built into stair risers or bench seating on the empty side of the house. If a builder does not plan for that aggressively from day one, you end up with a beautiful open floor plan and nowhere to put your dry goods. The third problem is natural light, and this is the one that catches people off guard. If your utility wall does not face a good exposure, and your windows only run along the open side, you can end up with a kitchen that is noticeably darker than the rest of the house, which makes the whole home feel unbalanced even though the square footage is identical throughout. The fourth problem is resale flexibility. Because the wet wall carries every single plumbing run in the house, moving the kitchen or bathroom later, say if a future owner wants a completely different layout, is a much bigger job than it would be in a home with plumbing split across 2 walls. You're not just moving cabinets, you are potentially rerouting the only supply and drain lines the house has. None of these are deal breakers. They are trade-offs, and knowing them up front is the difference between a linear plan you love in year 1 and still love in year 5, versus one that starts to feel like a compromise the first time you try to cook a real dinner in it. So here is that detail I promised you at the start. The single biggest factor in whether a linear single-wall tiny house feels genuinely spacious or feels like a corridor with a bed at the end of it is not the total square footage. It is where the light lands and how far your eye can travel before it hits a wall. Designers working on small footprint homes in 2026 keep repeating the same 3-part rule. Natural light needs to reach the center of the plan, not just the ends. Storage needs to live at the walls, never in the middle of the floor. And there needs to be one unbroken sight line from the entry door to a window on the far end of the house. A linear plan is naturally suited to hit all 3 of these, but only if the window placement is planned around that open side deliberately, rather than windows getting added wherever they are easiest to frame. A single large window or a section of glazing on the empty wall positioned so it lines up with the entry door, does more for how spacious a tiny home feels than an extra 50 square feet would. A long horizontal awning window mounted above the kitchen counter, paired with a full glass entry door directly across from that workspace, creates a cross-lighting effect that pulls daylight straight through the plumbing wall and into the room, which is one of the simplest fixes available for the darker kitchen problem we just talked about. Light-colored flooring and pale wall panels on that same open run reflect what light you do have back into the room instead of absorbing it, which matters enormously in a home this size, because there simply is not a lot of light to spare in the first place. This is also why the ground floor bedroom trend has been picking up steam alongside linear layouts. Instead of tucking the entire sleeping area into a loft, some 2026 builds are running the linear plan the full length of the home and placing a low-profile bedroom at the far end from the kitchen, keeping the continuous sight line intact while still giving every zone its own identity. If you're trying to decide between a linear single-wall plan and something else, here is the quick, honest comparison. A galley layout with plumbing split across two facing walls gives you more counter space and more storage, but it costs more to plumb, and it will always feel narrower because you're walking through a corridor between two walls instead of across an open room. An L-shaped or open concept layout gives you the most flexibility and the best sense of space, but usually needs more total square footage to pull off well, which means a longer trailer or a bigger footprint, both of which raise the price. The linear single-wall plan sits in a very specific sweet spot. It is the layout that makes the most sense when your square footage is genuinely tight. Your budget is the deciding factor, and you're willing to trade some kitchen capacity and some storage flexibility for the lowest possible construction cost and the most open-feeling floor. Based on everything we just walked through, this plan tends to work best for 1- or 2-person households, for anyone building their very first tiny house on a tight budget, and for anyone planning to use the home part-time rather than cooking multiple full meals a day in it. If you're building for a family, if you regularly host, or if cooking is a genuine hobby rather than a necessity, you will likely be happier paying the premium for a 2-wall or L-shaped kitchen, even in a small footprint. The linear single-wall tiny house is not flashy. It will not win you points on a design blog for originality, but it might be the single most honest floor plan in the entire tiny house world right now, because it does not pretend you can have everything in 400 square feet. It picks one thing to be great at: efficient plumbing and open living space, and it commits to that trade-off completely. If you're planning your own build, tell me in the comments which side of this you land on. Would you take the extra open floor space and accept a smaller kitchen, or would you rather have the second counter and live with a slightly tighter walking lane? I read every single one of these, and the answers genuinely shape what we cover next on this channel. If this video actually helped you think through your floor plan, hit subscribe because we have more honest, no sponsor breakdowns like this coming, and I would rather you learn this from real numbers than from a builder trying to upsell you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.